Most first-time authors know that they are going to need to invest in their memoir at some point. Now, there's lots of ways this can look, but most of the time what I hear people saying is that they want to get the draft done and then they'll get an editor. But even when we get to that point, the idea of a manuscript being done enough for an editor can be kind of a fuzzy line. So today I want to talk about how you can know for sure when is the right time to invest in that memoir. Stay tuned. If you're ready to climb out of the free advice rabbit hole and get some real one-on-one support, you are in luck. Currently, registration is open for the Memoir Method. This 9-month group program will give you everything you need, from training to support to real accountability. Learn more at pageandpodium.com/memoir-method. So today we are talking about how to know when is the right time to invest in your memoir. Now, I think one of the tricky things here is that it's difficult to know what we mean when we talk about investing. This can look all kinds of different ways, right? So anywhere from investing, meaning that you are going to hire someone to help you, right? This might be an editor, it might be a freelance or book coach or a company that does that kind of thing, maybe a hybrid press. Most authors that I talk to do realize that there will be a point where they need to spend some money on getting some kind of support. But that isn't the only way we invest, of course. We also invest by putting more of our time and our energy and our focus into the project. And that can be difficult too. Most of us are not capable of going 100% full bore all in for the length of time that it's going to take you to plan, draft, revise, and publish that book. For most of us, there are going to be kind of waxing and waning times in that process of writing. Sometimes we are going to be totally all in, other times we're kind of picking at the manuscript, and that is okay, except that there are particular times and particular situations in which we really need to make sure we're strategic about how we are investing our time and our energy as well as our money. So I want to talk through 5 ways that you will know it's time to invest. And while I think all of these are really important and really valid, stay tuned, because number 5, I think, is a really often overlooked clue that this is the time for you to put that investment into your book and move it forward a little bit more efficiently than maybe you have been up until now. Okay, so let's dig right in. The first reason that you can know that it's time to invest is when you have been working on your book for usually about 2 to 5 years, but you're really not seeing progress. Now, I see this all the time. I've actually seen authors that have been working on their book for 10 years, one that worked on his book for 30 years before he came to us. So this is something that happens a lot, right? We've got the manuscript out, we're kind of picking at it, life gets busy, we put it away, and then, a few months later, we remember we had that manuscript. This is totally understandable, and to be totally honest, any long-term project, which a book certainly is, we are going to expect that, right? There are going to be times that we are able to spend our whole amount of time and energy on that project, and there's going to be other times that we just aren't. That is okay, so do not hear me saying, shame on you for putting this book project off. That is not what I'm saying. But what I do want to say is that very often there gets to be a tipping point, 2 to 5 years in my experience, when if you have started to lose that momentum, it is very unlikely that you are going to be able to get it back on your own. And I want to give you an example of a client that I worked with pretty recently, Michael Studeman. Now, this is not a memoir project. This is a general nonfiction book that he has written. It's excellent. It'll be out sometime in 2025. And this book is about how our educational system was shaped by some of the debates that happened in Congress around Reconstruction, so following the Civil War. And one of the things when he came to me to work on book coaching, one of the things that he said was, when he had started that project, it was like a passion project for him. He was pouring his whole life and his whole self into this book. But life happens, right? In his case, we had gone through a pandemic between the time that he'd started the book and between the time that he came to work with me. He had had a child. He'd gotten married even since he had started that book. He'd moved across the country twice. So lots of things, lots of life was lifing for him. But one of the things that he said that I think really can apply to a lot of people is that as he moved through these stages of life that very necessarily pulled him away from the project, it not only was that he wasn't making progress at the rate that he wanted to, it was also that that lack of progress was feeding itself. Every single day that he went by promising himself he was going to write, but not writing, just added another layer of this kind of shame and kind of disappointment that we feel about ourselves when we hold ourselves back by not getting the support that we need, right? He really needed somebody to help him see the passion, help him find that drive why he was writing it. He needed somebody to give him some tips and tricks. He has ADHD. One of the things that we really worked on were what are some of the ways that we can really lean into the strengths that he has from ADHD, and also think about some of the tips that we can use to get through writer's block for neurodivergent people. And he also just really needed somebody to read his work and encourage him to move forward. 2 to 5 years. It was about 5 years that he had been working on this book, really not making the progress he needed to. And what needed to happen was he just needed somebody to just hold his hand and pat him on the back. So if you are at that tipping point, if you are at the place where you have been working on this book 2 to 5 years and you are seeing kind of a steady decline in your progress, if that is what you are seeing, that is a really, really good sign that now is the time to invest. Now, are you also going to need to invest later in an editor? In Michael's case, he didn't need to actually. The only investment that he made was in the book coaching. By working together, we were able to get that project in the shape it needed to be. It's coming out with a traditional publisher, like I said, in 2025. So he actually only needed to invest in that book coaching. But that may not be you, right? It may be that you will invest in a book coach and then you will need to invest in an editor later. That is entirely possible. And I know that that can be kind of hard to hear. But the thing that I want to point out, the kind of mindset shift I want to share with you, is remember that if the manuscript never gets finished, you will never be investing in that editor. You know, I hate to be a downer. I hate to share things that are, kind of upsetting or disappointing. I try to be really uplifting on this channel. But I want you to hear what I said. If you never finish the manuscript, you will never invest in an editor because you won't have anything for them to edit. So if you feel yourself waning, if you feel your energy getting less and less focused on that book project, and in particular, if that situation is making you feel really bad about yourself, your writing ability, or the project itself, that is the time that you need someone outside to come in and prop you up. Okay, so if you're at that 2 to 5 year mark, that is a really, really good sign that it is time to invest. All right, my second reason, the second way you are going to know that it is time to invest is if you have been writing. So you are not having that problem Michael was going through where you weren't getting the writing done. You have been writing, but you're not really sure what exactly you're writing. Usually this is linked to not having a plan. If you have been watching this channel, if you've watched many of my videos, you know that I am a huge, huge proponent of making a plan. And this is double, triple, quadruple true if you are writing a memoir. Now, one thing that I want to talk about here is that often our fiction writer friends will kind of lead us astray a little bit when we are writing a memoir because many fiction writers, not all, but many fiction writers will do what is called pantsing. Now, when we talk about pantsing, that's just an abbreviation for flying by the seat of our pants. And it is something that many novelists will use. Stephen King, very well known for pantsing, but he is far from alone. In this type of writing, usually what you'll do is you'll figure out kind of the scenario, the characters, the premise, the main conflict, and then you will kind of live inside that world as the writer, as the author. You can explore kind of how do these different relationships come together, go apart, how are these people relating to one another, and how are they reacting to the conflicts in their environment, to whatever this premise is you've set up. Now, one thing to remember is that pantsing can be efficient, but often it's not. Oftentimes, people who are pantsing in fiction know that at the end of that process, they will have a lot of material that they will have to go back and basically rewrite, right? This is a really a much more common thing in fiction than in nonfiction in my experience. In nonfiction, we often expect our first draft to be a little further along than I think a lot of fiction authors expect their first draft to be along. But for nonfiction, the idea of pantsing is just terrible. You should not do it. In fact, I have even heard people say that if you are pantsing your memoir, you are essentially just journaling, and I can't disagree. Whenever we set out to write a memoir, we are choosing a very specific point in our life, right? If you're writing an autobiography, that's a different thing right away. But when you are writing a memoir, your reader is going to expect that memoir to be united and cohesive around one particular theme and one particular kind of moment or challenge in your life. Unfortunately, when we are doing that kind of work for ourselves, we're choosing this slice of our life, we're explaining it, we really are not able to sort through, just off the top of our head, to sort through what's relevant and what's not. So what I find happening a lot is that if people try to pants their memoir, if they're just writing without a real plan, they will end up with one of three problems. First, their memoir never ends. They can keep writing and keep writing and keep writing and keep writing, and it's just scenes and ideas. It's a journal, right? So you will never ever be done with a memoir if you don't have a plan. That's very, very common. The second thing that I see happen is that these memoirs that are pantsed, that don't really have a plan, just end up being all over the place. This is totally normal because I will tell you, when I'm working on my memoir, I have really vacillated on what I wanted the theme to be, right? So if I were trying to pants that, one day I would probably be writing in terms of one theme toward one argument or message, and the next day I'd probably have a different argument or message, right? The problem being that because that's not planned, because that's just kind of random, it's going to feel random to your readers, right? And then the third thing that's going to happen is that as you are pantsing, as you are kind of just making it up as you go, you are going to notice yourself feeling less and less and less confident. The problem is, because we have this memoir issue where we really need to know where our memoir is going to start and end, we really need to know what our message is. I think we all know that. And as we are pantsing, as we are kind of making it up as we go, it's just becoming more and more and more clear that you're not going to be able to do those things until you sit down and figure out the real plan, right? So, between these three things, what often happens is that people with the best intentions sit down to write their memoir. They're hoping that they're going to be able to do it, off the cuff, on the fly. But at some point, they realize that they really are not making progress. And too often, that is going to result in what I talked about in the first reason, which is putting that manuscript in a drawer, forgetting about it until, a year, 2 years later, you think, oh yeah, I was writing that book, right? And you're going to pull it out and usually do the same thing all over again. So if that is where you are, this is the time that you need to invest. Now, there's lots of different options, but one of the things that is really important here when you are doing your plan for your memoir is to remember that a memoir plan is basically the same thing as a memoir outline. So what you are looking for when you're facing this problem is something that's going to help you structure that book. How is the flow of events going to play out in such a way that the message you're trying to share, the lesson that you learned, is going to be at the front and center of that book, clear for your readers? So we have a program for this, the Memoir Method. We're actually getting ready to open the doors, so check that out. If you would like to apply, you can do that at pageandpodium.com/apply. But that is far from the only option. You also can purchase one of the many books that are available on the topic that will help you structure that out. In fact, I often find that fiction structuring can be a helpful thing to learn about. So if you are kind of a DIYer, dig into one of the many books on structuring your plot. Or, of course, you can get a one-on-one book coach that can help you do this as well. But the biggest thing to remember here is that a plan is, in this case, going to require some level of expertise. So if you're not sure how to outline your memoir, that is an excellent time to invest in that book. Figure out how you can get some help to make sure that that outline is cohesive and that it is pushing you forward and guiding you through in the way that you want it to. Okay, the third sign that it is time for you to invest, or in this case, just that you generally need to be investing a lot, is that you have contentious relationships at the center of your memoir. Now, I work with a lot of authors who have a really central theme of some kind of a conflict. A lot of times there's a trauma or there's a difficulty or a challenge that they came through. And the idea behind the memoir is kind of how to triumph over this particular type of challenge, whether that is with another person, something within yourself, something in your environment. We all know these conflict types, right? So I want to give as an example here Wendy Davis's excellent memoir, The Fight You Don't See. If you haven't picked up this book, go pick it up. It is so good. But one of the things that when Wendy came to us to work with us, one of the things that she was really giving a lot of thought to was how much she wanted to name names. And in fact, I remember she used that language all the time. She would sort of jokingly to her friends say, "This is the memoir that names names." Now, to give you a little bit of insight into what this book is about, Davis ran for political office and she lost just by 78 votes, a bit of a spoiler. But throughout the campaign, one of the things that she really learned was that, yes, she had opposition from the other party, the party at her opponent and the party of her opponent that she was running against. But she also found that she had some opposition from people within her party, just in terms of kind of towing the line, party politics, following what people were telling her to do, even if she didn't think that was the right thing. Well, those are the names she wanted to name. What she really wanted to point out in this book is that political power structures are all over the place. They are not limited in any way to the people that we kind of assume they're limited to. Power structures are just part of the fabric of politics. Well, as she was kind of thinking about how she wanted this memoir to go, it wasn't an easy decision to name names. And, of course, naming names is not the only thing you're thinking about if you're in this boat, right? You're going to name names or you're going to give them pseudonyms, yes. But also, how much action are you willing to share? How many details of what happened are you willing to share? How many details are you comfortable revealing without just totally showing all of those people who you gave pseudonyms to? And for Wendy, one of the big questions she had was, how much dialogue am I comfortable attributing to someone who is not me? And one of the things she did that I thought was so clever is that in her book, you will notice if you look for this, by the way, in her book, she only gives quoted dialogue to herself. The people she's talking with, she does not quote what they said back to her, even if she was pretty sure what it was. She doesn't quote it. She kind of describes it. Now, you would never notice this if you weren't looking for it. But I think it's so clever, so I want to just let you in on that little life hack of writing your memoir. But here's my point. That was very difficult for her to figure out on her own, because whenever you are writing about contentious relationships, there is always this push-pull between wanting to tell the truth, wanting to really reveal what you learned, and so knowing that then you need to share all of the gory details, right? And on the other side of that battle is this kind of awareness that the more of these details you reveal, the more of these kind of internal insights, things that you experienced usually in private that were harmful to you. So you are going to share that they are harmful to you. The more of that you do, the more likely you are to poke some kind of a bear, whether that's a legal bear, relationship issues bear, whatever it might be. Now, we have a video that's several months ago called How to Write Your Memoir's Villain Without Burning Bridges. So if you are in that boat, you might check that video out. But what I want to talk about today is the value of investing in a second set of eyes. If you have this contentious relationship at the center, that I have found is such a sneaky thing that will derail your book, because there is no better recipe for self-doubt than vacillating between these two things. How much do I want to reveal? A lot, not too much. You're going to go back and forth, and it will very often stall you. So what Wendy needed, what many people that I've worked with over the years needed, is just somebody to be objective, somebody who doesn't know those people, but who knows you, somebody who can really be very honest with you about what is going to be good to include and what, is actually maybe not even serving your message. So let's not poke that bear. So this is something where a one-on-one book coach is really helpful. A group program can be really helpful. You could even bring in an accountability buddy, somebody that's just going to kind of look things over and talk with you. But the great thing about hiring someone in this situation is that you probably don't know them, right? If we're bringing in a friend, there's oftentimes going to be, we love this about our friends, there's going to be some bias against those people that hurt you. I'm so grateful my friends have bias against the people that hurt me. But because they have that, they might not be the best support system for you. So if you are in that case, let me suggest that you go ahead and invest right now, just so that you can make sure that you have that kind of second set of eyes. Okay, number 4. This one may seem obvious, but I want to give a little bit of nuance here. Number 4 is, it is time to invest in your memoir if you have a complete first draft. Now, I know I kind of opened this video saying that a lot of times people are waiting until they get through the first draft and then they'll hire an editor. In some cases, that is great advice. Go for it. But one thing that I have seen over the years is that people will not ever feel like their manuscript is ready to go to the editor. I talk to people like this all the time, by the way, that we'll have like a first consult and then we'll kind of email a month later, and a couple months later we'll email again. And what is usually happening is that they're afraid to send the manuscript to that editor until they think it's perfect. But why are you sending it to an editor? Right? The problem here is that when we wait until we have done everything perfectly, even when we wait until we have done everything to the level that we believe is our best, by that point, we have spent a lot of time working on things that may or may not have been the things we needed to work on. So one thing I want to suggest here is that rather than thinking about hiring an editor, which I think people get kind of weird about that term, what does that even mean? I want to suggest that you hire an editor or a company or a person, however you want to think about it, to do a manuscript review for you. Now, this does not have to be super expensive, and in fact, you may not need a full developmental edit. A full developmental edit is going to be a whole kind of a multi-page letter with all the things to fix. It's going to have inline notes and comments where that editor has marked things up for you. It is a very thorough thing to get. That is helpful if you are able to spring for that, by the way. But there also are services where you can just get the review part. And in fact, Page and Podium offers this. We try to keep ours to like 3 pages tops, just because we know at this stage that you've got your manuscript drafted, you probably need pretty general feedback, actually. You're trying to revise it. Most people just need a little bit of guidance on where to head on the revision. So we don't need all that in-depth stuff that really makes it get expensive and time-consuming for that editor. All you need is a little review. So if you are at this point where you have a manuscript draft, it is time to invest something. Now, maybe you're going to invest money into hiring for a manuscript review, into hiring a developmental edit, Or maybe you're going to invest some of the friendships that you have built over the years to have a very close friend, give it a read, give you some feedback. At any rate, when you have that first draft manuscript finished, that is the point to get an editor. Do not fool yourself into thinking that you're just tweaking and playing and you're going to get it perfect first, because that is going to put you those 2 to 5 years in a hole, just the way that these other things I've talked about will. It's going to derail your confidence and it's going to derail your manuscript. So this is the time, if you have that draft done, invest in getting some help. You can do it. Okay, the last of these reasons. This is a really, really good one, y'all. It is time to invest in your memoir when you understand the full meaning of what you went through. Okay, what do I mean by that? I have a video that I did a few months ago that's called How to Know When You Have Healed from Your Trauma Enough to Write Your Memoir. Check that out if you're kind of in this process of navigating, whether you're ready or whether you're not quite ready. You've got some healing to do, or you feel pretty confident and stable. You're thriving now after surviving this really difficult experience. Okay, and the reason that I wanted to put this one in here is because I see so many people who really know that they have something they need to share. They know that someday they will write a book. But when that someday is going to be is just kind of like foggy and murky, right? So they'll have to go through this 2 to 5 years of kind of having that book in a desk. They'll have to go through this real struggle between, how much do I share? How much do I hold back? What I want to tell you is that you will know that it is time to invest in that memoir when you have fully integrated. What I mean by that, this is a psychological term. We have integrated when we have taken the story of our life, the whole story of who we are, our identity, what we like, dislike, who we are, and we have integrated that with this trauma that we experienced. Now, if you have been through a major trauma like this, you are probably familiar with this very strange feeling that must have happened to somebody else, that there's this kind of sense that you're not quite ready to embrace that other someone that this happened to, and there's kind of just a little bit of distance. The integration process, this is what we go through in talk therapy. If you do EMDR, you're working on this too. That integration process is all about bringing together the story of your life and your trauma, and not bringing them together as two things, but bringing them together because they are the same. Because who you are right now is not only about your whole life trajectory, but it's also about what you came through, what you conquered, what you survived, and what you have overcome to thrive in this world once again. Okay, so those are my top 5 reasons, the ways to know that it is time to invest. Now, if any of these are you, reach out. I would love to help you move forward with your project if you are ready to invest. If you're not quite ready, that is totally fine. One of the ways that you can get started without any investment at all is to check out our Memoir Method checklist. So you can download that totally free at pageandpodium.com/checklist. So I hope that this has been helpful. I can't wait to hear from you when you're ready to invest. Happy writing. Have you hit the brick wall of the information you're going to get from YouTube, podcasts, and Google? If so, now might be the time to get some real structured support. And now is a great time because we currently have registration open for our next cohort of the Memoir Method. In this 9-month group program, you will get access to a training vault with everything from step-by-step instructions on how to outline and plan, all the way through to tips on publishing and marketing your book. Plus, you'll get weekly group calls where you can ask your questions directly to Emily and I. You can get an expert opinion right when you need it. Plus, you'll get weekly check-ins to make sure you stay accountable and that community support I know you want. If you're ready, head over to pageandpodium.com/memoir-method to learn more and apply today.